Welcome to the Altogether Show with Eric Satz. On this show, you'll hear Eric's unfiltered interviews with interesting and untraditional entrepreneurs who ignored boundaries, followed their instincts and own paths, and are now empowering others to do the same. Subscribe to the show and learn more by visiting altogether.show. And now your host, Eric Satz.
My guest on the show this week, Jenny Lefcourt, serial entrepreneur turned venture capitalist. Jenny and I grew up in Miami together, went to Killian High School before parting ways for college, and then having our paths cross again in San Francisco when I was an investment banker and a company she started was getting ready to go public. I should mention she started this company by dropping out of Stanford Business School and being told to not come back. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I do.
This episode of the Altogether Show is brought to you by Alto IRA. Alto is a digital, self-directed IRA company modernizing IRA investing. They make it easy and cost-effective for individual investors to access their retirement savings and invest in alternative assets. To learn more, visit altoira.com.
Jenny Lefcourt, how the fuck are you?
Wait, are we telling the honest answer now? Not great. I'm not great. I started the pandemic thinking that I was living my best life in lockdown. I was exercising. I was spending all the time with the kids. I was doing some of my finest work. And then, I don't know, little by little, I think it's worn thin. It's hard to watch what's going on in the world. It's hard to have the fires recently have made everything a little bit harder. Sick mom has made everything a little bit harder. And so how am I? At a macro level, of course, I'm fine, but I feel like it's wearing thin.
Yeah, God, I totally get it. So for those who don't know, Jenny is a founder turned VC. You can read about her on her LinkedIn. It literally says founder turned VC. The founder of Wedding Channel. So one of the first e-commerce plays ever. And I don't know if you remember, but after a lifetime of growing up together, we sort of reunited when Wedding Channel was,
yeah.
Right?
You were an investment banker, right?
I'm a recovering investment banker now. So Wedding Channel and then Bella Pictures and now Freestyle, which is sort of the very brief professional bio of Jenny Lefcourt. But if you're on if you're sitting across the table from a founder that you're thinking about investing in, and the founder says, well, tell me about you. What do you say?
I'll say, well, I founded these two companies. No, I'm just kidding. What about me? I mean, as a person, I would say I'm 51 years old. I've been married for a long time, and luckily love the hell out of my husband, which is, I feel like in COVID times you count all your blessings a little extra much, and being in lockdown with someone you love is awesome. And we have 3 kids, 18, 16, 13, are all just awesome, and also be great, also great people to be in lockdown with.
Boys, girls.
We have a boy who's 18 who just graduated high school, was supposed to go to college in the fall, but had back in April decided, almost, to be honest, no matter what, who knows what the fall will look like, but almost guaranteed to be a clusterfuck. So let me try to preserve freshman year and take a gap year. So he still doesn't know what he's going to do. It wasn't because he always wanted to travel. It was a true optionality, to preserve freshman year. Whether or not it's back to where it was or back to a new normal, it will be hopefully better than, sort of being the first class to come out of enter college.
In a pandemic.
I was going to say in a pandemic. I almost said after, but we're in a pandemic.
Yes.
Unlike, if you watch RNC, you would think it's over. It's not over. We're in it. And so anyway, so son who's going to go to college next fall, rising junior, girl, and then boy 13, he had his bar mitzvah,
Congratulations.
not too long ago. Pre-pandemic bar mitzvah, which was great to not have to do it over Zoom. Thank you. Mazel tov to us and then to him. And And then just to like, fill out the cliche, we added a little puppy about a year ago because it felt like that was the right thing to do. Yeah.
So we felt like the right thing to do was in a pandemic was to add a third puppy.
That is actually the right thing to do. You did it correctly. That's what everyone was doing. And lucky for us, we're investors in a number of pet startups. And so the pet industry, the dog industry is booming in a pandemic.
Totally crazy. Yes, it's nuts. Everybody got a puppy. So that's really, you grew up in Miami, Florida. I know that because we grew up together. We went to high school together. What was it like for you growing up in Miami? And did you love it? Did you hate it?
You're going to have to compare and contrast because I'm pretty sure I was alone here. I hated it. I absolutely hated it.
I never would have guessed that.
I know, that's what I'm saying. And you looked like a guy who was actually loving it. So I want to hear your experience. But first of all, I don't do severe heat well. And so I feel like people say, well, how did you deal in Miami? I'm like, I grew up my whole life sweating. And if I'm really honest, because this is all about just being honest, I have very frizzy hair and I cared very deeply about my hair in high school. And so to go to school and like have to deal with the humidity and frizzy hair in high school. So one, I was very hot. Two, I was really bored. And that's my fault. And we can talk about this. This is where I think you and I were different. Because I could read the Cliff Notes. I could get my straight A's without learning, right? Because we went to the huge high school and like you could absolutely get lost. So the smart ones, like there was a group of us who I think had the I don't want to call people smart and not smart, but there are a few of us, I would say, the more ambitious crowd. And there were those of you who like took learning seriously and really enjoyed awesome teachers and took advantage of everything our school had to offer. And I fell into, I would say, a rut with myself where I cut every corner. And I read the Cliff Notes. I'm pretty sure I cheated. I mean, like truly, like probably looked over at other people's paper, if I'm honest, and did what I could to get my straight A's, cut classes to get the hell out of Dodge. Like I just didn't take learning seriously at all. And I was bored, but it was my own fault for being bored. I didn't do sports. So yeah, I hung out with my friends and cut corners and just counted the days to get out.
You had a really close group of friends, though.
Oh, I had great friends.
So it's really, this was in no way the answer I was expecting, by the way.
I know. That's the fun part, right?
It is very much the fun part. So I want to dig into that a little bit. So were you bored? Was it that you were bored with school or were you bored with life? Because you didn't seem bored with life.
No, I had great friends. My dating life was good. My friends were good. I guess I just didn't know what to do besides hang out. Like I wasn't doing sports and I hadn't fallen in love with learning at all.
Yeah.
And so school was just something I got through. And I don't know, I just like, I couldn't wait to get the hell out of Dodge. And I have to tell you, as soon as I got to college, I had a total attitude change. I was surrounded by all these people. And once again, I put the burden on myself. Like the people like the people were around. It was something in me. But when I got to college, I was surrounded by all these people who really like were interested in learning. And I absolutely changed. I never cheated. I didn't cut corners. I fell in love with the sort of the idea of the love of learning and saw learning as a privilege when I got to college. And I was surrounded by people who were similar. And I went on a completely different sort of trajectory in attitude as it related to that. And I've never been quote unquote bored again. So I don't know what it was in Miami, but I felt like those movies that you watch in the suburbs, like Dazed and Confused. I feel like I was in Dazed and Confused.
So I want to put this into context for everyone who's listening. You know, all of your cutting corners and whatnot in high school. Where did you go to college?
I went to Penn.
Yeah.
So but because I could test well, right? Like I could cram for a test and test well. I could read the Cliff Notes and pass the multiple choice test, right? Like you could kind of get by with that. And actually it became almost like the monkey on my back, that here with my kids, all I say is like, I don't give a shit about your grades. You need to be learning. You need to be trying. Like the grades will fall out, but like that's like the thing that I miss. So yeah, I got my straight A's. I got great test scores, but like I was just cruising by. I was what's called doing school, right? And I did school, and I did school well, and I could that was something I was able to do. But I cheated myself out of I think that love of learning, or
No, but you found it.
I found it. I found it later. Yes, I did find it. You're right. I found it.
And I think so long as you find it, and there's so much pressure on kids today, and I'm really happy to hear you talk about how you think about this now with your kids, because mine are at college. So I have
I didn't know all of yours.
Yeah, so I have a senior at Penn, living in Philly with his roommates in a house off campus, going to school virtually because no one's on campus. And then I have a daughter who's a sophomore at Amherst College, where it's just freshmen and sophomores. We'll see how long that lasts. So
I did not realize you had both of yours at college. Okay.
Yeah.
You got started young.
I'm what we call a freebirder. So you're right behind me.
Right.
You're right behind me. So
I'm like 6 years, maybe. Yeah. No, 5 years. Yeah.
Well, you have 3. We only had 2.
You're right. Otherwise, I'd be 2 years behind you. Yeah.
But the third is a whole nother story. So
the third raised themselves, by the way.
Yeah. I think this idea of doing school is the unfortunate place that we all find ourselves in today with respect to our kids. It's like everything is just to get to the next thing instead of embracing the journey, so to speak. I hate to be cliche, but do it for the learning. Do what you're interested in.
Yeah. So my kids, for good or for bad, I don't let my kids do school. I just don't. And so it's like, I've been preaching this because this has been my baggage, if you will. And like, even as we went through the college journey, I was just like, don't do anything because you're supposed to do it. And we'll get to, like, I think you probably saw on the form I filled out, but I kind of did that for my first job out of college. And then after that, I was like, never again. So I really am like, I tell kids, I love that. I think it's called, no, it's not Common Sense. What's the Diane Pope organization out of Stanford? Anyway, there is a new way of thinking where they're telling kids not to do these things just to get into the Ivies, just to do, like, Ivies don't matter. But anyway, there's a lot of data that playbook, first of all, kind of did work in the past, right, of our generation, because if you did go to Penn, and like if I graduated Wharton undergrad, you had all these jobs waiting for you, and they weren't waiting at the other schools. Those days are long gone. So like these kids need to actually just take care of themselves and actually apply themselves. And they're so trained just to show up and follow instructions. And it's terrible. I sound like a really old person, but yeah, kids these days.
No, you sound like a really smart person, someone who has learned to adopt and to adjust and to make changes. I think it's really smart. It's so smart. So you have 3 kids. You were the youngest. How many siblings?
I have an older brother, 5 years older, and an older sister who's 2 years older.
Okay. And so were you the typical youngest child? Did you raise yourself?
Yeah, I did. I was actually, I would say, almost even better. It's like there were no expectations on me whatsoever. Truly, when I got into Penn, my family was like, wait, she's smart? Like no one had like even looked at my grades, which that's kind of what we do with our third too, which like may or may not work out for him. We'll have to do a podcast in like 5 years, but
we will.
But yeah, so it was this like ultimate, like there were no expectations. It was find your own path, and everything, as long as like my brother was the troublemaker. My sister sort of was a little bit more like lived very much in the box. You know what I mean? Like follow the rules, get the rules right. And so I had this freedom to kind of live between these pretty two extremes.
And if I remember correctly, and, again, I won't be surprised if I get this wrong because I had no idea that you were bored in high school. You were not exactly a rule follower. Forget the whatever happened in class. You and your friends were not rule followers.
No,
Do it.
never been. Oh gosh, you're going to bring that up?
So, well, I'm going to bring it up because, I mean,
Oh, that's funny.
There were some very fun nights for me at a place called Mental Floss. I don't know if you remember Mental Floss. So
it's fuzzy.
well, it's fuzzy because we typically had a lot to drink when we went, but it was an improv. It was a live improv.
Oh, I do remember. Right.
Yeah. So live improv in Miami, Florida. And I think you and Rachel and Robin
Yeah.
were big rum drinkers. Yes,
Yeah,
no?
that I can believe that. It's fun. Like I said, it's also fuzzy. I think I drink a lot. Like, I mean, it was never an alcoholic, but
No.
like, yeah, no. And there was a lot of that. No, so I wasn't bored. Like I said, my social life was full, but inside I was kind of bored.
Okay. That makes more sense to me now. So you were kind enough to fill out this questionnaire in advance of coming on the show. And one of the questions is which side? And I don't provide any more guidance. It's which side, and you get to say, left, right, or in your case, both. What does that mean? What does both mean? What do you sleep on both sides of the bed and it doesn't matter? Or I mean,
Yeah. So first of all, I thought it was a funny question, which I appreciated. And so at first I thought he must mean bed. And then I realized,
did you really think that? Did you really think that?
I did think bed.
Okay. So
yeah.
By the way, it is the question. It is bed, but you're the first person actually to know what I'm asking.
I assume. I mean, it's kind of odd, but I assume he means bed. And then it's sort of it does depend. So I'm trying to think here. So I'm usually on a side, but sometimes in a hotel room, maybe who's closer to the bathroom or who's closer to the window or who's so it can switch.
Yes.
And in general, I'm pretty, bed or not bed. It's kind of both. I'm adaptable.
So it's really interesting to hear how people interpret the question because it's purposefully vague.
What else is there?
And well, there's political spectrum for a lot of people, which and it's funny because when they answer the question, they don't say that they're answering based on politics, but you can tell that they're answering based on politics.
Oh, that's so interesting. God, that didn't even cross my mind. I just assumed bed, but I was like, he didn't say bed, but I'll just assume bed. Yeah.
And then there's the question of, is it the left side when you're looking at it, or is it the left side when you're in it?
Well, I had that question too. I was like, well, yeah. So nope, I went through it all, and that's why both was very safe.
So you hate hot weather because your hair frizzes.
Well, no, I actually hate hot weather, period.
Okay.
And in high school, it was extra hard because my hair was extra frizzy, and I was extra careful with hair and makeup in high school.
And yet your coffee preference is hot. Do you drink iced coffee or is it just hot coffee?
No, I'm hot. Yeah. I have this weird thing in my head. Maybe I read it once, maybe I made it up, that I get more caffeine if it's hot. And I'm sure that's not true. But as I say it out loud, but yeah, I like, even on a hot day, I go for a hot cup of coffee.
I can't start a day with colds with iced coffee. It has to be, it doesn't feel like it actually starts with iced coffee. You have to have hot coffee. I'm with you.
No, it's just wrong. That's just wrong. I will say that on hot, I think also part is like you live in Northern California long enough, and like I can't really, if it goes below 70, I'm chilled, and if it goes above 82, it's too hot. Like the range is it's embarrassing. Yeah.
So you live in Marin, and I'm curious, why Marin as opposed to elsewhere in the Bay Area?
So let's see. We were in San Francisco for a long, long time. I was probably there 20 years. I've lost track. It can't be 20 years, but call it 15 years. And we thought we were going to be in the city through and through. We were in the Mission. This is before the Mission was gentrified the way that it is now. So we were kind of in the hood a little bit, and great with it. Right? We enjoyed it. It was
Where were
Park
you?
Station was South Van Ness between 24th and 25th.
Yep.
So like there were active gangs and like, but they didn't bother us. There was great food. It was great weather. But at some point we started to feel like we have 3 kids, and we'd wake up and there'd be sometimes needles in our front yard or used condoms. And it just our kids started, and we were still okay. But then our kids started noticing, and they were at that age, and we're like, okay, this is starting to feel a little like not so good. Let's move. And we wanted to stay in the city. And so, but we still loved the Mission. It was Mission Dolores that we really had our eyes on. And we just kept on getting priced out. We thought, well, we never want to live in the suburbs. Like it was really, if I look back, it's almost embarrassing. It was such an identity thing. Like, oh, we're too cool to move to the burbs.
Right.
And we had friends up in Marin, my dearest friend actually from college, and still my closest friend, was saying, what are you guys fighting? Like, it's sunny and beautiful here. Because we would like talk about how Leo went to his first soccer game, it was freezing, or learning to ride a bike is so hard. And we would just go to their place in Marin, and it was just glorious. And so after getting priced out 3 times, we said, you know what, let's just look at Marin. We know we don't want to live there, but like, let's just look so we never have any regrets. And so we spent one day, and they were showing us all around. And I said, you know, there was this one house in Kentfield that I really liked online. Can I just see that one house in Kentfield? And we went in, and up to that point, we were like, definitely not, and we're smug, right? Like we knew it. We knew this wasn't our place. And then we walked into the house I'm in right now, and we're like, why, this is just perfect. And then instantly it changed, and we're like, we'll take it. And the guy's like, well, do you want to see other homes in Marin? And we're
No.
like, no, other homes in Kentfield? And we were like, no, well, this is our house. And he was like, okay, that's weird. But we were so programmed from the city that like you had to move fast. And so we moved, and here we are. And so why here? I would say we wanted, we loved the nature. And it's funny because at the time we didn't want to live in a town that was too much a one-trick pony town. So remember, this is back in the day when San Francisco wasn't a one-trick pony town. And we thought if we moved to Palo Alto, that would be like just full of VCs and founders and nothing else. And so it felt like we didn't want to go in that direction. And then the East Bay, we had our reasons why that wasn't working for us. But so Marin felt like nature, and we were nervous that it would hurt us, maybe our careers, because San Francisco wasn't yet the hot spot. It was still all down in the South. But my husband was running Cooley's sort of, I'm blanking on the name, but like the startup part of venture-backed Cooley. Yeah, I'm blanking on the name, but anyway, but San Francisco was still like questionable, and they were even talking about closing the office in San Francisco because all the action was in Palo Alto. And literally after we moved, it's probably within a few months that you could see San Francisco start to be the epicenter, and that was incredibly helpful to both of us. So I could be telling you a different story, how Marin was not the right call. If the world hadn't kind of moved up to San Francisco, that would have made both our lives incredibly challenging.
Professionally, maybe challenging.
Professionally, sure. Yes.
But the show's called You Do You, and you made the right call for you, and it just so happened that the world followed, which is always nice too.
That's a bonus. But yeah, you're right. Me be me, or whatever it's called. Like Marin is beautiful. I mean, it's like we're in San Francisco in a heartbeat, and we're surrounded by nature and beautiful weather, and we like the people out here. And so, you know, it's good living.
So on that questionnaire, I say, whenever were you not true to yourself, essentially? And you said it was after you graduated from Wharton and you took a job with Arthur Andersen to become a CPA. First of all, it's the last thing I ever thought you would be. But why pursue that path? Why did you do it? And yet you stuck it out to sort of finish the licensing.
Yeah. So something about me is I am goal oriented. Like I just am. So I've learned to appreciate the journey way more. But like I'm usually journey because I know where I think I want to be. Not so much career wise, but just everything. My whole mantra is always purpose before action, work backwards, But anyway, so that's in me. And so at Wharton, the way that it worked is you just had a business degree, and then you had a concentration. So it was 4 additional classes. So it's not like I spent years in accounting. It's like 4 additional classes. And because I grew up with accountants, my grandfather was an accountant, my father's an accountant, my sister, it was like in my blood. And so it seemed like a very responsible thing to do. And I was always sort of bought into the belief that, like, no matter what you do, like, you need to understand the numbers, and accounting was this good foundation. So while everyone at Wharton was running into finance, I did accounting. And then, I can't even remember how early, but then the firms come knock on your door, make you an offer. And it's a pretty good offer. And so it's this path of least resistance. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so that's an offer. And I knew I wanted to live in New York City. So I was like, okay, well, like, sure. You know what I mean? Like, that's a solid thing to do for whatever I do next. And the night before I started work, I literally cried to my now husband, then boyfriend, to be like, what am I doing? Like, I know I don't want to do this. Like, how did I get here? Like, oops, I forgot to actually make a conscious choice. Like, truly, I just kind of followed this path. And it seemed like, well, after college, you get a job, and here's a job, and that's good money. So like, I never actually thought, which is so crazy to me. And so I cried, but then I was like, okay, I went in the next day, and I just kind of made it through the 2 years. Like, I took the exam, and the exam is kind of hard to take. And so I took the exam, and I got that part done. So once you had the exam, you had to have 2 years, and I worked 2 years to the day.
Nice.
And then I got out, and I don't know if I put this on the form, but one of my favorite stories is that I went to the woman in HR and said, okay, well, I'd like to quit. And she said, why? And I said, well, I'm going to go backpacking with a college friend of mine. We're going to take a year off. And she said, oh, that's wonderful. Let's have you do a leave of absence. And then you can come back, and the job's still here. And I said, no, can you put in my form? I really want to quit. And she's like, oh, you don't understand. This is just this is just an option. So if you come back and you want your job, that you can have it. It's not a commitment. We're not asking you for a commitment. I said, oh no, I totally understand what it is. Can you put in my file to not let me back in? Because I don't belong here. And I may come back weak and in need of money. And so please put that down. She looked at me like I was out of my mind. But I was like, I need this door sealed tight, because I know I don't belong here. But I also know that I may come back and not know what I want to do, and then just accidentally get back on that path.
I love that story. So where does your backpacking trip take you? But before you answer that, did you like living in New York City?
I loved living in New York City. I was not born in New York City, but I didn't love my job. I did love the people I worked with, and I loved New York City. So it was a wonderful 2 years. I missed the city. Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to ask you, I mean, obviously you've been in the Bay Area now for 20 some odd years, because we're old.
Yeah.
But do you think about living in New York City ever?
Yeah. My husband does not love New York City. And so I visit, when for work, I can go as much or as little as I need, but I try to go more. So I'd like to visit it. I don't think I'm meant to live there, but I feel like, if I were an empty nester, I think it'd be a really fun place to live. So we'll see. But it was not his happy place when he lived there. And I love the Bay Area, so it's not like I've been miserable and begging him to move to New York City. But yes, I would consider living there.
So where did the backpacking trip take you, and when did you decide to apply to business school?
So bought a one-way ticket, which included a few key stops. So we made a stop. We started in the Cook Islands, where we became certified scuba divers, which is relevant because we were going to Australia. So the way the ticket was, we bought a one-way ticket to Australia with a stop in New Zealand, and then we could pick one more stop, and it could be Fiji, Tahiti, Cook Islands, or something. And we said, well, never heard of the Cook Islands. Let's start there. So that's like kind of the attitude, right? Like it was all about, it wasn't like, here's my bucket list of places I want to go to. It was like, it was the ultimate, who knows where this journey is going to take us. Let's just go. And so got certified to scuba dive, which was amazing, became a big part of my life. And then went to New Zealand, which I love. Talk about places I would move to. I think New Zealand would be very, very up there. In fact, I think the reason I ended up falling in love with Northern California was it felt like almost the closest thing to New Zealand, especially Marin, that I had ever seen. And then went to Australia. And then from there, we just kind of figured it out and would buy one-way tickets. So we ended up spending a ton of time in Indonesia, a little bit in Malaysia, the Philippines, which we ended up getting tired of moving. We were traveling versus we were always just kind of moving, staying someplace until we were ready to move. And I think by the time we got to the Philippines, we were a little tired. And so we ended up getting our dive masters, where we stayed on this island for $4 a night in this beautiful kind of hut on a white sand beach, and we could go diving, unlimited amounts of diving, and with one fee because we were getting our dive master. So it was this thing. So I think I lost track of how long we stayed there, but I think about a month. I think the woman I was traveling with, my closest friend who lives in Marin, I think she stayed twice as long. But then one of my friends was meeting me in Nepal, and from Arthur Andersen for my CPA job. So I had to get to Nepal by a certain date. And so I left Felice, my friend, in the Philippines, went through Thailand, met my friend Risa in Nepal, trekked in Nepal, and then my friend and I met back up in Thailand, finished up in Thailand, and then came back to the United States. But you were just constant. And by the way, for all you kids out there, this is pre-internet, if you can get your head around that. So we didn't know where we were going to be. So we had these American Express places, and we tried to tell our family, they got our letters, but they kind of didn't know how to write to us.
Right.
So we would do our best to say where we thought we were headed generally. So at least we could say we're going to fly into Sydney at this point. So we can hit the American Express office and pick up something there if you send it. And then in the Philippines, we would take this bus for about an hour that literally had chickens on it and stuff to get to a place where there was one payphone. And then we'd make a phone call home, which we would do once a week. But it was it was awesome. And so there was no email, there was no news, there was no cell phone. And it made things harder, it made things awesome.
And this was a point in time where you actually kind of needed an American Express traveler check to pay for stuff, right? That is totally different.
Yes, you are right. In my fanny pack, I would have my American Express traveler checks. You're spot on.
No Bitcoin.
Yeah. No Bitcoin.
So when did you apply to Stanford? Did you go to Stanford Business School? Did you apply before you left?
There is a gap.
Okay, I'm asking.
So I didn't know where I was going to come back to or what I was going to do. And I figured it out while I'm away. And I didn't figure out what I wanted to be. And I kind of stopped even trying to guess. So I came back, and my now husband, then boyfriend, was at Stanford Law School. So I just moved in with him and his roommate. And then I had access to the Stanford Career Center. And so I would go there, and once again, kids back in the day with no internet, it was in binders, all the jobs, right? And there would be these binders where it would say healthcare or teaching or business or whatever. And there would be all these binders, and I didn't know which one to pull down because I literally had no idea what I wanted to do. Now, I thought I didn't like business because I didn't like Arthur Andersen. So I was but I ended up taking down these binders. I'd be so envious when people would come in and would know what their binder was and they'd yank it down. I'm like, so you just know your binder. Wow. Because I was looking at everything, nonprofit. I just had no idea. So I just read job description after job description until I found one. I was like, now that sounds cool. And there was this one called, it was basically a marketing assistant at this software company. And the job sounded super cool. And so I applied. Now, and it was my first interview. And so the funny thing is the the company was called My Software Company. And I said, but that's just the dumbest name I think I've ever heard. So you know what, I'll apply there and interview. And like, because I've never really had to interview, right? Like to get my job at Arthur Andersen, they took my pulse basically. Right. And so, I mean, truly, like you're at Wharton, you have good grades over here. So anyway, and I went there and my mind was blown. What I didn't know is this was Silicon Valley, right? And so you had all these people wearing shorts and tank tops or t-shirts and sneakers. And then they all were so smart. And so I met with a bunch of people and I was just like, what the fuck did I just walk into? Like, I don't even understand. And my husband was like, that's the Valley. And I was like, the Valley? Like, I sort of was like, I just hadn't paid attention. And so sure enough, that was the company that I started working for. And I worked 3 years and I had the best time ever. It's where I actually believe that Silicon Valley, we can talk if it's a meritocracy or not. I definitely, that company it was. And the more you were willing to do, the more they were willing to give you. And so it was amazing. And so at one point, at a software company in Palo Alto, like a mile from Stanford, I'm living basically right off of Stanford. And we're all sitting around, we're like, now what is this internet? Now, is AOL the internet or is the internet AOL? And I mean, I'm in Palo Alto. And I said, you know what, I'll go figure it out. And they're like, wonderful. So I go and I figure it out. And they're like, okay, let's have Jenny be in charge of the internet division. And so I got to kick off the internet division, which was really cool. And it actually made sense for I won't bore you with what this company did and what an internet division, the products we put out. But that was like, that's where I was. And it was awesome. So what happened was, I was working with all these such smart, incredible people, great attitudes. Like it was really, it was amazing. Loved that job. And, but they all went to Stanford. They had all gone to Stanford. Most of them for business school, some of them for undergrad. And it was just the way they spoke about Stanford sort of broke my heart because I liked Penn, but I didn't feel that way about Penn. And it was right there next to where I was living. And I sort of had this magic. And I felt like, wow, if I kind of like my only shot of getting that magic is go to business school there. And I'm kind of at that age where if I'm going to go to business school, I should go to business school now. So I applied to Stanford. I did not apply anywhere else. And so it was like, it wasn't business school. It was like a love of, I want to go there. As Liz Lemon says, I want to go there. So anyway, so I got to go there. And I think, as you know, I left after 1 year because we got funding for the first company, but it wasn't because I didn't like it. I loved it. It was just, a door opened up sooner.
But you got funding. And so you drop out and you start. So you start Wedding Channel with your partner, Jessica Heron. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So was there a light bulb moment? How did this, I assume you all were in class together, probably?
So it's funny because this has been me telling you my life story, it will actually make more sense. So, and it's, yeah. So hiking in Nepal, trekking in Nepal with my girlfriend,
there we go,
who says, when the hell are you ever going to get married? Like, you and Craig have been together for a while. And I said, like, why would we get married? I said, you know what? The day that I want China is the day we'll get married. And I don't want China. And so, and then we're literally checking the Himalayas. She's like, it's interesting that you say that because, like, if you think about it, and we just started going off about, like, we like people today, they register like they're their grandparents, but we don't live like your grandparents. So like, really, wouldn't it be cool if brides and grooms could register for like camping gear or travel gear or whatnot? And so my friend Risa and I came up with this idea, and it was we weren't looking for business ideas. We're just trekking, talking shit in the Himalayas. And so we came back and
you were actually just riding the bus to the payphone for an hour. So you had to talk about something.
Well, no, that's the Philippines, Eric. You got to pay attention.
Oh, no. God, I'm totally confused in this trip at this point. Yeah. Okay.
The Himalayas, there was no payphone. The parents had to wait many weeks.
You sent pigeon.
Exactly. Basically. So there was that idea. No. So, but it's all full circle. So then so I had that idea, and then my Risa was like, let's do it. But I felt like I needed structure. I moved out to California. She was at NYU, whatever. So it didn't. And then I'm at business school, and I am interested in entrepreneurship, and I'm actually really interested in venture capital. And there's this great sort of, not class, but this program where you could write a business plan on something, and then you get to meet these VCs who give you feedback on your business plan. So I decided that's super cool, and I'd like to do that. And there was this woman I'd seen around. We're not friends. Her name's Jessica. And I thought, well, maybe she'd like to do it with me. So I said to her, would you be interested in doing this? She's like, sure, but like, do you have any ideas? And I said, I do. And I explained it, and her jaw dropped, and she said, I wrote a business plan for that a year ago. And her take on it, which made sense because now it's 3 or 4 years later, is that what's something you don't need to touch and feel, right? Like, you can buy a book online because you don't need to touch and feel it. You know what author, what title, you want it. So wedding gifts are the perfect e-commerce application. So we basically put those two ideas together, let brides and grooms register where they want for what they want, let the gift buyers just see, I don't care what Eric wants. Like, I know I love Eric. I'm going to spend this much money on him. I just want to click and get him whatever he wants. Perfect e-commerce application. So we kind of married those two ideas, and that was our business plan. And then we got feedback, and then we got enough, like one of the judges at Kleiner Perkins was like, Dave Wharton, he's like, guys, are you pursuing this? Because I think it's actually a really good idea. And we're like, well, yes, then we're really pursuing it. So second semester of our first year, we were like kind of attending classes, but mostly putting our energy in this and meeting with VCs and figuring out, the plan and trying to get retailers excited. And by the end of our first year, we had multiple terms, but we went with Kleiner Perkins and had told the dean, hey, we're going to leave to go pursue this. And he said, like, basically, you're not welcome back here, because we were the first. It wasn't yet a thing. .com hadn't quite hit. And so it later became a thing, and they've become very understanding and generous and have all different kinds of policies. But at the time, who the hell in the right mind left Stanford Business School? So we said, listen, we got to try this. But if it doesn't work, and it might not work, we'd love the ability to come back. And he said,
I called Arthur Andersen, and they said, shut the door.
Exactly. I have it on your file. He said, and this is, I'm pretty sure, very close to a verbatim, if you want to come back, that's because you failed, and we don't want failures here. We were like,
what a dick.
Well,
I'm sorry. What a dick.
He was old school, and I get it then, but he evolved. They evolved. They've been wonderful since. And it's just like there was a new trend, right? And his thinking was, if this is a really good business idea, it will be here in a year. And we said, no, it won't be. It's .com. And there were a number of others trying to do.
There were a lot of them
to try to do.
Yeah,
like a lot.
I remember. I was banking them all. So.
That's funny.
In hindsight, maybe. So, so you drop out. You're a founder. You're an entrepreneur. You're now a venture capitalist. Where do you get more energy? What do you like? What do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy both? Talk to me about being an entrepreneur versus being a venture capitalist.
Yeah, so I think in my heart of hearts, I'm an entrepreneur, right? And I did it a couple more times after Wedding Channel. But the truth is, it wreaks havoc on the lifestyle, at least like what I've learned. I don't know if you know your Enneagrams, but I'm an Enneagram type 8, which means I'm intense. And so for me, I don't dabble that well. And so it's sort of like almost too much. So here I am. My husband works a lot. I have 3 kids. I want to be with my kids. I love to constantly question myself, like life with no regrets. Like I really want to live that way. And so, the way I talked about it, I didn't make a conscious choice about Arthur Andersen. I make conscious choices every single day and question myself, am I doing what I love to do? Am I doing it for the right reasons? And so, being a founder where I was in life and like, the amount of vacation you can take, if you can really get off, the intensity, I don't want for myself anymore, but I love creating. And I actually always love being the woman behind the man or the woman. I never really enjoyed being number one and being in the spotlight. That was not where I got my energy and my joy. So it's kind of a dream job because at Freestyle, I get to back incredible founders who have life, so, who are ready for that journey. They said, and I don't mean to be an ageist, but like they have youth. Youth is
Yes.
good, people. And so I love being the woman behind the man or the woman and just trying to load them up with knowledge, challenging them, using my network to support them and making their dreams, theirs, a reality. And what's lucky about me that I know a lot of founders turned VCs is I'm not controlling. And it's not just like, I don't think I am. My husband, my kids, my coworkers will tell you, like, it's not a trait that I have. And that turns out to be lucky. So I can like work with my companies. I have strong points of view. I have conviction on certain things. But the moment they say no, and here's why, and I think that their logic and thoughtfulness makes sense, I'm like, you go. So like, I like this role and I get tons of energy from getting behind people or getting on board with people, supporting them, helping them, seeing them go off. And then what's beautiful is they leapfrog me and they get to this place where I'm learning more from them than they can learn from me. Because the truth is I never scaled a business, right? I got a couple businesses to maybe zero to 25 million. But beyond that, so like, it's really fun for me to connect in with like Alexia at Better App, or I just spoke with Gia at Well Health. And it's like, they're tackling things and hearing about their journey. I'm learning from them and I can help them out in other ways, but it's different. I'm like a founder, like, I don't want to say a founder whisperer, but like, I'm like, if I have any whispering capabilities, it's in how do you get from 0 to 1 to N. I'm not, that's somebody else.
So 0 to 1 is really interesting because I think seed stage investing is some of the hardest investing to do. So, and for those listening to the podcast, I personally believe that portfolio diversification and inclusion of alternative assets in a portfolio is really important. But how you go about that process and how you diligence can be tricky. There's a learning curve. How do you make your investment decisions? What are the characteristics where you're like, I'm in?
Yeah, so there's a few things. So first of all, I have to kind of see or believe what the founder is sharing as their vision, and kind of believe like whether it's this team or another team, that's the way it should work, right? Like that is a better way given all these other factors I know. And then I have to say, okay, if that does work, let's just take a leap of faith and you get to the other side. That has to be a big valuable company, because some things can work but it's not going to be valuable. And I'm not investing, some of my money is my own money, but it's LPs, right? So I'm here to produce a return. I'm not confused about what my job is. So I have to believe that if successful, one, do I believe that vision is the future for this industry or this use case? Two is if this team is successful doing it, that's going to be a big valuable company. And then three, that this is the team. And I work super closely with the people on making that, on having them be successful. And so it has to be something I actually care about. But what's interesting is care doesn't have to be like positive earth. Like I could be in a commercial real estate transaction platform, right? Crexy is one of my companies in LA, and people would be like, you care about that? Like, so care kind of hits me in funny ways, but I have to really understand the problem, believe in the solution, want to work with the team. So there's a lot of good stuff that I see that I just like, if it kind of can't own my head and my heart a little bit, I'm not your person. And I always say to founders, like, you deserve that person. Like, get your smartest, most passionate capital that you can.
So you brought up Crexy. Have you met Gavin Myers?
No.
Okay, we can talk about that later.
Okay.
Great guy who I worked with for a long time in San Francisco, who is a big corrects the investor. The
Which firm?
Anyway. I don't know. I don't remember the name, but whatever. Yeah. So it's well documented that minority entrepreneurs, women or otherwise, are disadvantaged when raising money. What role does that play in your sort of vetting and decision-making process? Does it? And I know it's something that you care about. So can you talk a little bit about your efforts in that area?
Yeah. And am I allowed to be a little long-winded to tell you my journey here?
You can be really fucking long-winded because this is really important. I'm just going to plug my own team for a second, by the way, because our chief operating officer, our chief revenue officer, and our chief product officer, all female, and they're all the fucking bomb and they rock. So anyway, I try to hire smarter than me. That's my whole mission, is to hire people smarter, better, faster, all that. Okay.
I invest in people that are smarter than me always. Like that's
Oh yeah.
It's like, why would you do it any other way?
I don't know.
But I think that's awesome, by the way. So here I am. I go to that company called my software company. The more I do, the more they're willing to give me. I buy in. It's meritocracy. I get funding. Me and my other, my other partner is a woman as well. We get funding. It's never hard. We get more funding. Okay. So I then start advising and angel investing for a period of time after my second startup. And these women, I'm mostly working with women because I have a great women network. And they're all telling me that fundraising as a woman is so hard. And I actually am telling them they're wrong. They're crazy. Like, it's not. You just have to do it like this. No, I truly I believed it. Like, it's in your head. No, let me teach you how to do it. And then I become a VC, and I'm like, wait, where are the women? Gosh, there don't seem like there are that many women. So I start reaching out, and I work really well with men, but I also work really well with women. And I'm used to, most of my really good friends are women. And so that begins. And then I start reading the data of why are there so few women in VC? And I start reading more data about founders and I realize, oh shit, I was wrong. I had my head buried in the sand. You cannot deny the data. Why, I cannot figure out at this point. But I didn't know about systemic, right? So I just truly couldn't. And so I just read more and more. So I'm kind of getting, I would say, awakened. And then you start to see the bad behavior. And it was so upsetting because I really had believed in our industry that that shit wouldn't fly. I actually had made statements like, I'm sorry, but venture capitalists are capitalists. They won't care if you're a purple midget. They're going to, if you make them money, they don't care. That was my mentality, to then getting so educated, and so not just educated by propaganda, but data educated, to realize, oh shit, this is a problem. And then you start to see the abuse, which is over summer. You had Justin Callback, you had some other bad things. And Aileen Lee, who's Cowboy Ventures, and she's been a VC, she came from Kleiner. She's just awesome. She sends a bunch of us an email that says, hey guys, pretty disturbing what's going on in our industry. Would anyone like to get together over dinner and just talk about maybe something we all could do to help? And I couldn't have said yes faster. And so couldn't a lot of people. So 17 of us got together, just what can we do? And we talked about, well, you could do things to help people who have been harassed or who aren't getting paid as much or whatnot. By the way, at this point, very women focused, not yet more diverse founders focused or other diversity focused. And so we decided, there's too much power around this table. We were all true check decision makers, check writers, board members. Why don't we use that power to try to create the future we all want to be a part of? So we didn't talk about starting a nonprofit. We didn't talk about a name. We just started actually shipping product. And each thing would take its own momentum. So like Jess Lee at Sequoia and I worked on the first female founder office hours. We went to demystify the funding process. Jess held it at the Sequoia offices in San Francisco. It was wonderful. Then Jess took that program off and took it off. And I mean, I think it's happening nationally now. But anyway, so then Jess took that and ran with that. I took on something called Founders for Change, where we realized all these founders actually wanted diversity on their cap tables, on their board, in their board, because it then helped them with diversity internally, and they knew how important that was to ultimately win. So I kicked off something called Founders for Change, and then there were all these other initiatives going on, and somebody came and said, "You guys need to create a nonprofit, and here's millions of dollars to go." And so we did, and it launched with great fanfare. It was called All Raise. And that still exists today. Now we have a CEO, and we have, a full-time staff. So we still have a bunch of us that are very involved and committed. And it's kind of like all these programs have now just increased sort of the impact and not just Valley focused. What was interesting on that journey, though, was we still were not educated on people of color in our industry. And we did some things that we look back on and realize, okay, we were ignorant. And luckily, people educated us, right? Rather than assume we're bad people. And that's what I do with people related to women. Like if men are saying women are hard to find, I'm like, let me educate you versus assuming they're bad people. And so luckily, when we made mistakes, we being the All Raise team, there were people who then would actually educate us, and we would have our eyes open and open more and more. So one example of that is we did this mentorship program, and we picked the VC mentors. We decided they really needed to be awesome. So we picked them from the Fortune 500, Midas list, from the Midas list. So therefore, guess what? You didn't really have women or people of color as the mentors, but it was just like, well, we wanted to pick the best. So we picked off this list, and that was terrible, but we didn't see it. Right. And they're like, don't you get it? And then that's where we learned about systemic issues and how it related to people of color. So anyway, so since then we've done a far better job, and it's sort of, I have to say, selfishly put me on a great learning curve that come this whole Black Lives Matter. I've been getting more and more educated, and I still have a long way to go. I never think I'm there, but it was really helpful to get that through All Raise. So All Raise is focused on sort of making tech more diverse, both in funders and founders. But we're also aware too of, while the focus is women, people of color, being really careful that we handle our intersectionality well. And luckily we have smart people who have been on that journey with us. That was long-winded, sorry.
No, I wouldn't describe it as long-winded. I would describe it as thorough and important. And thank you for sharing it. And I think, I hope everyone building a company understands and gets the message that diversity among your team, whether it's gender or otherwise, only leads to a stronger team and greater perspective on the outside and the customer and all of that. And I don't think I don't think we could talk about anything more important than that. But
I could not agree with you more. And I just still think like you almost can't talk about it enough. And the data is just still abysmal.
So
it's abysmal.
It's terrible. But I'm going to take us to a slightly lighter subject, and then
Okay.
and then I'm going to let you go. Favorite investment? Do you have one?
One of my favorites, I'll say that, is BetterUp, because BetterUp is provides one of the themes I love is when things really help people and democratize things. And so BetterUp enables these companies, these big companies who have the budgets, to then provide coaching for all levels and all different kinds of sort of stages. And so it really helps that end user, the employee, they get the benefit of a coach, which has been a luxury up until now. And it helps the organizations, and the founders are incredible and are so authentic. And it's one of those investments where when I made it, every VC had passed. It was a hard one to syndicate. He was 2 weeks away from being out of cash. And now they are the market leader and the market standard, and everyone, like the companies love it. And any employee who uses it loves it. And so it feels good every which way. And the founders are incredible.
That's a great story to hear. So if you had two do-overs, one where you made the investment and one that you didn't.
Okay, there's no way I'm going to answer the didn't. There's just no
way.
way. There's no way. Are you kidding? No, I can answer. I can answer the different didn't. Yeah. On the one that I passed, and I'm not up to date on where they are now. There was this incredible founder who I knew was special. His name is Dan, and he was the founder, or is the founder, of Donut.ai. And he was doing this kind of automated onboarding so that when an employee joined, rather than hoping Eric took him out to lunch the way he should, did he get that training, all the things you want to do to make sure someone kind of enters the culture and community and is set up for success. He had done it in this really wonderful way, but it was super thin, right? It was lightweight, but he had all these ideas of where he was going. But it was earlier in my career, and I just didn't have enough about where he was going. And today I would have said, that guy is awesome. That's a great wedge in. He'll figure it out. But I was younger, and I was just like, kind of couldn't, like, without that ultimate answer of where it goes, I couldn't get there. And he's done incredibly well. And I'm happy for him. It's funny. I thought it would sting and that I would wish that any company I said no to didn't do well, but I don't feel that way at all. And so he's continued to he's done incredibly well. And it's just more of a reminder to myself of trusting my gut when you meet special people.
Yeah, and I will just say that onboarding is hard. Doing it right is really important, especially in today's environment. Where we're not all sitting in an office. We're at our homes, and we have our whole onboarding process as well. And I'll share a story about us. We had a woman who joined a few weeks ago, who has a very interesting name. And actually, if you look at her name, it looks like she has two first names. And also, I guess, depending on how it may present to you in email, it could be confusing. Is her first name X or Y? And so she's been on the team for a few weeks now, and she just sent out on Slack just the other day. She said, I just have to let you all know that not once has anyone on this team ever gotten my name wrong. And that is the first time. She's not a spring chicken. I mean, she's not an ancient either, but she's been around. She's like, that is the first time a company has never made that mistake. And I just want you to know that speaks to the culture of this company and how good it makes me feel. And I'm like, okay, we're doing something right.
That's awesome. So you founded the company that you're doing now, and you have this awesome team. Now you're doing a podcast that's new. What else do you have going on over there?
I kind of always do stuff, but the podcast, the podcast is, in a certain sense, a brand building exercise for the team at Alto. I don't want people to listen to the podcast and say, oh, he's pushing me to do X, Y, or Z. Yeah. But I do want listeners to have a sense for who we are, what our team is about, what we stand for. But whether you become a customer or not, that's up to you. And whatever you decide you want to invest in, that's also up to you. I happen to love speaking to interesting people and telling and hearing stories. And so in certain respects, this is really selfish for me. But I also think it can play a role in how people think about Alto IRA and what we do there. So that's why the podcast.
I think it's super cool. I may have to hit you a post podcast about it because I find it very intriguing, and the fact that you actually, do it and you do it regularly and you have people listening and your list of guests were incredible. I was honored to be on your list. It's with knowing that you are a founder and doing well and building your team and all of that good stuff. It's pretty impressive.
Well, thank you, Jenny. And thank you for being on You Do You.
Thanks for having me.
You betcha.
The Altogether Show is brought to you by Alto IRA. Alto knows that public markets offer insufficient diversification of retirement accounts. That's why Alto developed a streamlined platform to make it easy and cost-effective for anyone to invest their tax-advantaged retirement savings in alternatives. Assets like real estate, venture capital, and crypto that are outside of the public markets and available through Alto's 21 platform partners. To learn more, visit altoira.com.